Hey friends, I'm so glad you're here today because today I am part of the Deck the Chairs collaboration with Sonnet's Creative Network membership group. This one's inspired by Country Sampler Farmhouse Style magazine, and there are over 20 talented creators who are sharing their own holiday vignettes, all centered around thrifted chairs. In this video, I'll show you how mine came together to create a warm handmade vignette with that sweet nostalgic holiday feel. If you're new here, I'm Cindy, my husband is Chris. Welcome to CnC DIY Factory. I'd love for you to give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you think of my Deck the Chairs vignette. In this project, I am using a Santa bust that I ordered from Walmart. This is the smaller version. It's only about 5.5 inches tall, and I'm painting the top portion with Fusion Mineral paint in parchment, and I'm only going to be applying one coat. I'll be using Fusion Mineral paint for this entire project because it has a built-in sealer, which means I do not have to go back over this and seal it in. For the stand portion, I am using Woodwick by Fusion. I'll apply one coat, and once that is dry, I will water down a little bit of the oakum, and using my liner brush, I will carefully apply the darker color to the ridges of the base to add some depth. To create more dimension on this base, I will dry brush some of the Elmwood paint over the Woodwick, and then I'll follow that up with a little bit of the Algonquin for a highlight. I mixed up some of the chestnut mare, the rose water, and the cathedral taupe colors to create a flesh color. I ended up going back in and adding some other colors just to brighten up his face a little bit more, but I did that off camera. Here I used a stylus tool, which is normally used to emboss paper, and I dipped it into the midnight blue for his eyes. This is a very small area to paint, so this tool was perfect for that. For the Santa hat and coat, I am applying one coat of the Fort York red. We are going to be jazzing up his hat and coat later, but I need to have a base coat applied. For his beard and eyebrows, I'm using watered down soapstone and my liner brush. I want the paint to be nice and thin to create some shadows as well as adding some color to his hair. It also helps the dimensions of the piece more lifelike and create character. Now back to the hat and coat. I am using Pentart Decor and Tacky Glue. I am applying this over the red, and I will let this dry to a tacky finish. It's important to have a base color down before applying this tacky glue, just in case you miss a spot with the glue, so later on it won't be so noticeable. If you guessed I was going to use the Pentart Velvet Powder, you guessed right. I love using this for holiday crafting. It adds a soft texture and it's easy to use. You just add the powder everywhere there is tacky glue, and using a clean dry brush or your fingers, you smooth it into the glue. It only sticks where there is the glue, and the cleanup is easy. Now to add just a little something something to finish Santa. I am using the Pentart Snow Pen for the ball at the end of his hat and the cuff around his head. Once this is dry, it is hard as a rock, but it gives a thick white snow-like look that brings his hat that perfect touch. Okay, you will see the final Santa later on in the video. For this project, I am going to give a bit of chippiness to this thrifted wood and metal rocking horse. I had this in my booth last holiday season, but unfortunately, it did not find a new home. So I am going to take the wooden parts off and add some Sweet Pickens milk paint and oil wax to create a chippy vintage rocking horse. But first, I need to sand off the shiny top coat in order for my milk paint to stick. Sweet Pickens milk paint comes in so many beautiful colors. One of my favorites is the antique ironstone color. Milk paint is a 1-to-1 ratio of paint powder to warm water, and I don't need much, so I'm only using half a tablespoon of powder to a half a tablespoon of water, and I'll mix this up really well and set it aside to thicken for about 10 minutes. Once the paint is ready, I like to use a chip brush to apply my paint. I will apply one coat and let that dry, and then I'll apply a second coat. And you'll see the color really show up on the second coat of paint. I usually use a heat gun to speed up the drying and force the milk paint to crackle and craze, but this time I didn't need to. It created the chippy look all on its own. Now to seal in the milk paint, I am using Sweet Pickens oil wax in dark. This soaks into the paint and shows off all the chippy crazing the milk paint has to offer. Now once you apply the oil wax, let it soak in for about 10 minutes and then use a lint-free cloth to wipe away the excess. Once all of the oil wax is wiped off of the pieces, I will reassemble the rocking horse and you will be able to see the final product later on in the video. For this project, I am using the Christmas Post stamp set, and I have not had a chance to use it yet, so I need to season my stamps before I use them. To season them, you simply take a high grit sandpaper, and mine's 220 grit, and sand the stamps in one direction lightly. Then I turn the stamp a quarter turn and sand in the other direction. You only need to season your stamps the one time. I love the look of this vintage paper and I want to create some Christmas notes with them. So I'm using the water method to tear the paper in half, and then I'll go along the other 3 sides to create a worn look. This stamp set has Santa in his sleigh flying through the air with his reindeer, and I just love this stamp. I want to try the New Grass IOD ink color, but I haven't used this ink pad in a while, so I'm going to need to re-ink the pad. Now I only use a little bit of ink at a time, and then I smooth it into the ink pad with the tip of the bottle. I don't want to over ink my ink pad. Then I will lightly tap the ink pad onto the stamp. I position my stamp over my paper and commit. I'll hold one hand on my stamp at all times to keep it from shifting. Then I lift straight up and voila, a beautiful crisp image. This next stamp set is from a couple of years ago and it's called Merry and Bright. This one is no longer available, but you could use the apothecary stamps to achieve this look as well. So I chose the words Good Tidings of Comfort and Joy, and will follow the same process to ink up the stamp and transfer the image to my paper. Then I'm going to stamp some lines in the upper left corner along with the to and from out of the Merry and Bright set. In the upper right corner, I'll add the Place Stamp Here stamp from the Christmas Post stamp set. I had already stamped this on 2 other pieces of paper using the IOD black ink and the tomato ink. I want the edges of the papers to be a bit more distressed, so I'm using the Tim Holtz Distress inks in Tea Dye and Vintage Photo to grunge them up just a little bit. I really like this Christmas post stamp set, so I also wanted to make a postcard. So I'm taking one of the borders and I'm using the IOD black ink, and I'll stamp this image onto my postcard. To make sure that I have the postcard stamp where I want it, I'll place it on my paper. Then using the IOD thin mount, I'll pick it up off of the paper to ink it up. Then I can line up the edges of my thin mount with my paper to ensure the image is straight and right where I want it. Going back to the Merry and Bright stamp, I am using the Merry Christmas stamp, and I am using the tomato ink from IOD to give this postcard a little holiday wish. I always quickly wipe off the remaining ink from my stamps to keep them clean for the next use. To make this look like I have a stack of postcards, I added a piece of chipboard to the bottom of the stack of papers, and I tied a piece of twine around it. I think this adds just that little touch of nostalgia to it. For this project, I am using another stamp set from the 2025 IOD holiday release called Christmas Wishes. Now I've already seasoned this stamp, so I don't need to do that again. I'll be using 3 different IOD ink colors in black, tomato, and new grass, and I will use all of these stamps from this set individually, alternating the 3 colors to create a festive handmade wrapping paper. Now I'll just let you watch as I quickly create this paper. For this project, I will be taking a page from the Ginger Chick Rehab's book and mix my own milk paint color using Sweet Pickins milk paint. I am using Olive, In a Pickle, Willow, and just a hint of Lantern to create a vintage green. Once I have all of the paint mixed together and I like the color, I'll add the warm water. The milk paint is a 1-to-1 ratio, so however much paint powder I use, I need to add the same amount of water. Then I'll mix this up very well using my milk frother, and then I'll set it aside to thicken for about 10 minutes. Now, how can we have a Deck the Chairs video without the chair? I thrifted this chair a long time ago and it was in my storage unit. This is not the chair I had originally thrifted for this collaboration, but when we moved, I unearthed this chair and said, this is the one. My milk paint has thickened nicely and I'm only needing to apply 1 coat of paint. Once this dries, I will go around and see if there are any areas that need just a little more paint. So all in all, I applied 1.5 coats of paint. I am painting this chair in the late afternoon sun on a beautiful fall day, and this paint is drying quickly. I can see that the milk paint is crackling and crazing, and some of it is chipping off in a few places, and that is exactly what I want. Now that the paint is completely dry, I will use my 220 grit sandpaper and lightly sand over the milk paint. If there is any more paint that will chip off, now is the time. The sanding makes this paint so silky smooth. It is so nice. If you are new to using milk paint, it must be sealed in or it can be reactivated. My favorite sealer for milk paint is the Sweet Pickins Oil Wax in Dark. Now I'll use a chip brush and apply a good coat of this on the top half of the chair. Because I'm applying it in the sunshine and it's warm out, by the time I get it applied to the top half of the chair, I'll need to go back and wipe it off, or it could start to dry, and I don't want that to happen. Oh my gosh, I love this color with the dark oil wax over it. It is the exact vintage green that I was wanting. Okay, and here's what we've all been waiting for. It's time to put these projects together into a vignette. So for my Deck the Chairs collaboration, I went with a more traditional Christmas look. I love the cozy reds and greens, a charming Santa bust, some handmade postcards, and of course, I had to include one of my favorites, a Norman Rockwell Christmas book. I love how it all came together to create a warm, handmade vignette with that sweet, nostalgic holiday feel. Thanks so much for spending a little time with me today. I hope you enjoyed seeing how my Deck the Chairs vignette came together. I had such a great time creating this piece and being part of this fun collaboration inspired by the Country Sampler Farmhouse Style magazine. Make sure you go check out the playlist linked below so you can watch all of the other amazing creators from Sonnet's Creative Network membership group. There's so much inspiration and holiday cheer waiting for you there. If you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment. I always love hearing what you think. Until next time, keep practicing random acts of crafting. Bye for now.